Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
The first version of King of the Hill had one of the simplest engines in television. Hank Hill liked his life. Not in a vague, inspirational poster kind of way. He liked very specific things. His house, his truck, his job, his alley, his friends, his family, and the clean, burning glory of propane and propane accessories. And then something would disrupt that life. Bobby would find a new interest, Peggy would develop a new ambition, Dale would discover a government conspiracy inside a bag of mulch. The culture would shift 1 inch to the left, and Hank Hill would stand there horrified as if civilization had been installed with the wrong kind of screws. That was the old show. But seasons 14 and 15 are working with a different problem. Hank is not just dealing with one weird thing this week. He has come home after 15 years and discovered that the whole country updated while he was gone. And nobody left the manual in the box. This is why the new King of the Hill feels different from seasons 1 through 13. Not necessarily worse, not necessarily better, different, because it's no longer a show about a man trying to preserve a stable life. It's about a man discovering that stability was never guaranteed in the first place. And I think the interesting thing is that the revival understands this. Season 14 is the shock of return. Season 15 is the show realizing it cannot live on shock forever. It's become the King of the Hill again.
Stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas, the prairie skies are wide and high. Deep in the heart of Texas. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Seasons 1 through 13, the comedy of resistance. The original King of the Hill ran from 97 through 2010, and it was built for the old broadcast TV rhythm. You had a big cast, more than 20 episodes most years, a town that could keep producing strange little conflicts forever. One week, Hank is dealing with a bad employee. The next, he is dealing with a youth trend. Then Bobby wants to be something Hank does not understand. Then Dale has a scheme. Then Bill needs to be rescued from the consequences of being Bill Dotrieve. The original show was episodic, but it was never empty. Its stories reset. The characters rarely changed beyond recognition, but that reset was part of the philosophy. Arlen was a contained ecosystem. It had enough room for everybody to grow a little, but not so much that they became strangers to themselves. Hank could learn a lesson, but he would still be Hank the next week. Peggy could embarrass herself spectacularly and then return with exactly the same confidence she had before. Dale could survive a complete collapse of his worldview, which happened about twice a month, and wake up the next day ready to accuse the phone company of listening to his thoughts. That is not lazy writing. That is a specific kind of comedy. The original King of the Hill is about the friction between people and the changes they can almost, but not quite, absorb. Hank was often behind the curve. That was the joke. But he was rarely cruel. The show's real point was that Hank could be uncomfortable, confused, and deeply committed to doing things the old-fashioned way while still trying to treat people fairly. That is why the old series ages so well. It didn't use Hank merely as a punching bag for being old-fashioned, and it didn't use modernity as a punching bag just because it was new. It kept asking whether Hank could make room for something unfamiliar without giving up his basic decency. Sometimes the answer was no. Then usually by the third act, he figured it out. Hank Hill does not make speeches. He makes a face, exhales through his nose, and does the right thing while sounding like he has been personally inconvenienced by morality. That is the old King of the Hill in a nutshell. Now, season 14, that was about the comedy of reentry. Season 14 had to do a much harder job. It has to bring back a beloved show without pretending 15 real years didn't happen. So Hank and Peggy come back to Arlen after living in Saudi Arabia. Bobby is now 21, running a restaurant and building an adult life. The people around them are older. The culture is different. The technology is different. Even Dale has found a fresh supply of material because the world has somehow become more conspiracy friendly than Dale Gribble, which is pretty impressive in the worst possible way. Season 14's major subject is reentry. Hank is not encountering a new trend from the safety of his old life. His old life is what has changed. He has to understand ride shares, boba tea, smart grills, all gender bathrooms, changing social norms, an economy where apparently every task requires an app, a password, and a permission request that says it may access your contacts. And that is just not Hank's problem. It's the revival's problem. How do you make King of the Hill current without turning it into a show that just reads today's headlines in a loud Texas accent? Season 14 mostly solves this by making Hank the viewer's guide. He's disoriented. He's not a cartoon reactionary. When something is new, the show lets him ask the awkward question, then slowly find the decent answer. And that's important because the original show's secret strength was always its generosity. It did not need Hank to understand everything immediately. It needed him to be willing to learn. Season 14 brings that quality forward, but it also feels more aware of its own return. It's a revival, and sometimes you can feel it checking the mirrors. There are references to the old world. There are reminders that time has passed. There's a lot of understandable effort devoted to showing us that these characters still belong together. That gives season 14 a slightly different texture than the original run. It's less casual, has more weight on it. The show's saying, "We're back. Here's what happened. Here's where everyone is. Please don't worry. We remember why you love this." And frankly, that is a reasonable thing for it to say. The biggest difference here is probably Bobby. The most important change is not the animation, although people notice that at first. It's not the streaming model, although 10-episode seasons change how stories breathe. It's Bobby. In the original show, Bobby was the question Hank had to answer. What kind of father is Hank going to be when his son's not like him? Bobby's weirdness was the pressure point. His comedy, his interests, his weirdness again, his tenderness, his occasional complete lack of survival instinct, those things constantly tested Hank's understanding of masculinity and family. But adult Bobby, he changes the geometry of the show. Now, Bobby is not just Hank's son. He's a peer in the adult world. He has a business. He has relationships. He has an identity that does not need Hank's permission. That part is huge. Very, very big. It's huge. The original show was often about Hank trying to shape Bobby. The new show is about Hank learning to know Bobby. And that is way richer than just making Bobby older for the sake of it. Adult Bobby still has Bobby's voice, Bobby's rhythm, Bobby's odd confidence, but now he has stakes. He can succeed. He can fail. He can make choices that Hank cannot simply overrule from the living room. And then season 15 starts to use that freedom more confidently. Bobby and Connie's relationship becomes real rather than merely adorable. Bobby's restaurant is no longer just a premise. It's an evidence that he has built something. He is thriving in ways that Hank couldn't have predicted. And that is the most Hank Hill parenting story ever. Hank didn't get the son he expected. He got a son who found his own propane. And that's really good stuff. Season 15, it's really the comedy of living there. It's where the revival begins to settle down. The first new season needed to ask, what happened while the Hills were gone? Season 15 asks a better question. Now that they're home, what happens next? It sounds really small, but it's really not. Because season 15 moves away from the return itself. Hank and Peggy are not just reacclimating, they're retired. They have a grown son. They're entering a new stage of marriage and adulthood. The show's no longer asking them to react to modern life as tourists. It's asking them to live in it. That part lets season 15 feel more like the original series, even though the characters are older and the world is newer. Hank dealing with electric trucks and cars, Comic-Con culture, and the creeping mystery of contemporary life. I mean, it can be funny, but the stronger material is about time. Peggy confronting a different stage of her life. Bill slowly becoming healthier and more confident. Bobby building an adult relationship. And then Hank realizing that retirement is not the same as purpose. The season 15 finale makes this especially clear. Hank's connection to Strickland propane becomes the way the show reconnects him to a life he thought he had left behind, but under completely different circumstances. Now, that's not nostalgia, that's consequence. Old King of the Hill could usually return Hank to the alley at the end of the episode. The revival can still return him to the alley, but it knows that people do not reset the same way after 15 years. That is the biggest difference. The original series preserved its characters because that was the shape of broadcast sitcom storytelling. The new seasons let the characters carry their history. Now, what the revival keeps and what it changes. The fear with any revival is that it will mistake references for continuity. You bring back the catchphrases, you put the guys in the alley, you make Hank complain about a new product, and you point at something old and say, hey, remember this? That works for maybe one trailer. King of the Hill has survived because it understands that continuity is not a list of objects. It's a way of looking at people. The old show was super patient. The new show, still patient. The old show was skeptical but humane. The new show is still skeptical, but it's still humane. The old show knew that people can be annoying without being disposable. The new show, well, it still knows that as well. That's why Dale still works, that's why Bill still matters, and that's why Hank can be bewildered by the world without the show becoming cruel either to him or to the world. Season 14 has the burden of proving the show deserves to return. Season 15 has the privilege of acting like it already belongs here. And that's why season 15, to me, is the more important season. Not because it has to be louder, not because it has to beat the original. Nothing needs to beat the original. That is a fool's errand. And Hank Hill would tell you to enter a contest you cannot win with proper equipment. Season 15 matters because it stops asking us to remember King of the Hill and starts asking us to watch it. Seasons 1 through 13 gave us Arlen as a place where change arrives slowly, usually through the front door. And Hank had 30 minutes-ish to deal with it. Seasons 14 and 15 give us an Arlen where the change already happened. The phones are smarter, the kids are grown, the old assumptions have expired, and Hank Hill somehow is still standing there trying to make sense of it with a beer in his hand and a concerned look on his face. Bwaaa! That is not a failure of the revival. That is the whole point. The old show was about keeping your footing. The new show is about finding it again. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, hit like, and find us anywhere you get your podcasts. Just on a personal note, I would like to say hello to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. We love you very much. You are so important to us, and that is coming directly from my heart. I love it when people tune in and throw in their comments and things like that, and I'm glad and proud that we've become part of your lives. If there's anything we can ever do, I mean, within reason, for you, please let us know, because you've done so much for us. So I think that just leaves us with one thing left to say, and that one thing is, we matanye, even though he's not here. Indeed. We'll see you.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.